the rights after I define what color is to law. And like my favorite uncle used to say, Albert Paterno, my favorite uncle used to say, and you can do this too, take my advice, I got plenty of it, I never use any of it. As a joke, I do use my advice. So here we go about the color of law, and we'll talk about, come on in folks, hey, how are you doing? Haven't seen these folks in a long time. We're going to talk about color law and how that affects your rights. And then we'll talk about deprivation of rights, which is what I call them the Sweet 16 are going through. They're being deprived of rights. But let's talk about what color is. You know, color changes things. You take a white piece of paper, any color you want, you can do what you want, and it's not white anymore. It changes the disposition of that piece of paper. So that's what color does on law. About 15 years ago, I lived in West Willow, and I would make hot dogs all the time. Sometimes I would make the hot dogs, have little kids over, and give them hot dogs. Well, one day I did that, and I wanted steak. You know, we was fixing some steak for my wife and I. And this little fellow across the street, little black boy, and his color means something. This is what I'm talking about. I don't know, he's about maybe 5 years old, just cute as could be, but man, he was a bandit. I got to tell you, he was rowdy, this kid. But so I gave him the hot dog. We had about 4 or 5 kids there. We always do. Gave him hot dogs, and I'm getting into my steak. Okay, and then he come over to the grill. Let's be the grill. He looked up with little white eyes. He said, I'd like to have some of that steak." And I said, "Okay, I'll give you a piece of it. But I gave you a hot dog." Everybody said, I gave him a piece of it. He ate that, and he come back over and "I'd like to have another one." And I said, "If I give you one more, will you not ask for another one?" And so this just sets you up a little bit about how cute this little fellow is. And he said, "Yeah, I promise." So I was sitting down, having my steak, and he come over to me. You got to understand, these kids have a real hard life at home. And whenever I think about this, I almost cry because I know what kind of life this kid had. He got on my lap, and he looked up at me with those whites of his eyes, and just as cute as could be. He said, "Mr. Moe, is God white?" You know, and my answer to him was, "No, God has no color. God's a spirit. And to us," I didn't portray this, but I said, "but to us, you have to know that God's a spirit. If you're going to worship Him, it's in spirit and in truth. God doesn't have color. And God's law doesn't have color. It's plain and simple. It's God's law." Comes through the Ten Commandments, through some of the Old Testament. We get lost. So what is the color of law? Why does the Constitution and the precepts of the Constitution, why does that have to be colored? Because there is such a thing as color of law, and it's in Title 42, Section 1983, Title 18, 241, 242, 243. Under the color of law, anybody going upon the roads under the color of law, depriving rights, is guilty of, there's some pretty serious things that you can hold them to. So the color of law is this. It's not law. It has law's color. It is enforceable as if it were law. Now I'm going to give you an example that an old friend, long past, and some folks here will know him. His name is Johnny Papa McCoy. And that fellow was one of the real McCoys. And he was in the Navy. He told me this story because I used to talk about the gold fringe around the flag all the time. I did a common law abatement. It has a little bit to do with that. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But he said, "Dennis, you're right about that admiralty jurisdiction on that flag." He said, "When we would pull into port, the captain is the main authority, the sole authority on that ship until an admiral comes in." And I said, "Yeah, well, that would seem to be true. I would understand that." And he says they would fly a different flag. They would fly the United States flag with a gold fringe around it, and that means, because he was told what it means, that the captain is no longer in authority. There's an admiral on board. I got to thinking of how that applies to law and law's color. Now, when you go into court, you do a waiver. If a waiver of rights, a waiver of law, you go in under color of law. there's a gold fringe around that clip. Now, I've done several times common law abatement of statutory courts. Statutory courts are the color of law. When you cross that bar, you are waiving your rights unless you reserve them. UCC 1308 is under protest. Without prejudice, I'm reserving my rights. Now, if you do that, if you make that announcement before you go across that bar, you then are not in the jurisdiction that your attorney is bound by his relationship with the bar and that judge to place you into the jurisdiction of the color of law. It's right in front of your face. You have a gold fringe, and you cross that bar, you become under the jurisdiction of a foreign court. It's not the constitutional court. I've had people, judges say to me, don't mention the Constitution to me one more time, or I'll hold you in contempt of court. Well, he could hold me in contempt of court, because I was in a foreign court. I wasn't in a constitutional court. If I get a trial by jury for anything more, Seventh Amendment, anything more than $20, if somebody comes against you for $20, you want a trial by jury, they'll try to not give it to you. And if you cross that bar without having your rights reserved, then you won't get a trial by jury. Why? It's in the Constitution. It said, I understand $20 now, then it's more than $20 now, but it says $20. The Constitution is a document of words, and words mean something in law. And so the phraseology sticks in my mind that I used. By the way, I haven't got any preparation from me. This comes generally from what I know, I think I know, and what my experience has been. So I resisted the color of law. I resisted it. When the travel officer, what is his name? Not the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State told me I did not need DNR. Yes. He stopped me. I went to the Secretary of State and asked if I needed to letter my truck, and they said it had a tandem wheels on it. They said no, you don't need to letter them, and so I didn't letter it up where that truck was housed. I took their word for it. So DNR pulled me over and said, no, they're wrong, you have to letter, I'm going to give you a $250 ticket. Well, he gave me a ticket, and I went home, and my wife cried. She says that buys 2 weeks of groceries. Well, it did. So that made me angry. I got studying up on some things. And I decided to do a common law abatement of a statutory court. I went to maybe 2 or 3 seminars, too many, and learned a little more than maybe I thought I knew. But it worked. I'm going to tell you, here's what it was. When the judge called my name, I would answer, if you say, I'm here, you have just answered to the jurisdiction. You've waived your right of common law. So you don't answer that. You say, I'm here by special visitation as a public minister auditing this court of a foreign jurisdiction, seeing to it that the person named in this action is judged by his common law, supported by the Bible. Had the flag in one hand, the Bible in the other. And then I said, judge him thereby or judge him not. I got to tell you something. That judge gave me some looks. And I was a little bit nervous too. And he talked to me a little bit, and then he talked about pulling me on into the jurisdiction. And I said, well, if you do, I'm going to sue you under Title 42. And he said, for what? And I'm going to tell you right now, when you say that you're going to sue a judge under Title 42 for deprivation of rights, my knees started shaking the first time I did this. They were literally knocking. They were like knocking on each other, kind of communicate, telling that guy to shut up, man. He does in trouble. But yeah, I was scared. And that judge looked at me, because I said, I didn't call him Your Honor. I said, Judge, I need some time to check these papers. I'm not sure. I'm not very well prepared. His next words, quite to the contrary, you're very well prepared. Case dismissed. And I threatened to sue him in open court under Title 42 for practicing law without a license. Yeah. That I didn't tell you that. That's why I threatened to sue him. Okay, you mean he's practicing law without a license? You accused him in open court of that, and he dismissed the case, yes. And there's a man sitting in this room right here with a cowboy hat on that won $100 on the bet. All right, Steve?
He didn't dismiss it without prejudice, did he?
Yes, he did.
Oh, so that means,
He could have brought it back. If they dismiss with prejudice, it means so. Without prejudice means they have the opportunity to bring it back. It's a back door for it. Okay, so I resisted the color of that jurisdiction, the color of law. So color means something. When they say under the color of law, a deprivation of rights, this is what they're doing to Donald Trump, and this is what they're doing for the Sweet 16, I call them. You have a right to do what you did. There, Tim, and the 16, there was someone who didn't do it properly and put a form, my best estimation, I'm privy to some of the depositions. They're looking for maybe 3 people that filed some forms that you know nothing about, that you didn't have your eye on. So they may have a case against those 3 people. I don't think they can do what they're doing to you, and they're depriving your rights under Dana Nessel's color of law. They're depriving the rights of, in Michigan, the 16, and the other counties or other states that are going after Donald Trump, they're depriving his rights to run for president under the color of law. Now, you can end up doing that common law abatement, but you can't do it with representation, because the first thing lawyers do is usher you into cross that bar. The first thing, they're sworn to do it. They can't embarrass the court. They're sworn, and they will waive your right to common law, which is actually is Old English, and our Constitution is based on that. There's going to come a time when what we've done for 20 years, probably Steve knows how long we've been involved in, a long time, isn't going to work anymore. I've always said, when there's revelation, when it's revealed, when there's revelation, there's going to be revolution. If they keep indicting Trump, his numbers are going to keep going up. I know the backlands, okay? South Carolina is mainly backlands. I know the backlands in Indiana. You folks know the backlands here. If you get out of the major cities, you know how conservative people are. And I'm very surprised how much support Donald Trump has in those areas. They know they can't win. And I think because of a scenario that I talked about last week, and some of you weren't here, so I'll talk about it again. When it's revealed, the revelation about what they're trying to accomplish, there's going to be revolution in the street, because it's not going to stand in this country. This is America. And there are going to be some tough dues to pay. Now, I'm trying to keep my thoughts together so I can stay on point. The Democrat Party, somebody said this, and I think it's very true, and it was a revelation to me about the Democrat Party. You have liberals in the Democrat Party, which is the old Democrat Party, like John Kennedy. He was a liberal. He wasn't so bad, you know, John F. Kennedy. His politics were pretty fiscally correct. His social politics we didn't like. But the Democrat Party has become a combination of liberalism and Marxism. Now, the Democrat Party has compromised their standards of liberalism to include Marxism to have the levers of control. Because Marxism, if you read the Communist Manifesto, you're doing all of it. The Democrat Party is allowing that to be done in the name of the Democrats. And Khrushchev said he would take over America without firing a shot. Well, you know, think about it. The Democrat Party, if they win again, they're done without firing a shot, except for Antifa and the rebel rousers, and they're doing the same thing they accuse us of doing, us being conservatives who didn't do what they said we did January 6th. But let me tell you about a scenario that I fear fear is a bad word. I'm really not afraid of much. But I'm concerned that this may happen. And everybody here will remember, some know last week, and I think it's relevant, so I'm going to talk about it again. Richard Nixon, Spiro Agnew, Gerald Ford. Think of the relationship of that back when it happened. Richard Nixon, the reason it's debatable, but I know, and I found out that the reason he had to go was he knew all about the assassination of John Kennedy. And they couldn't let that come forward. So they found different reasons why he had to go. And he knew he had to go. Well, Spiro Agnew all of a sudden developed problems. It wasn't breathing problems, it was tax problems. All of a sudden he had tax problems. And he had to vacate the vice presidency. And come to find out, this person from Grand Rapids, Gerald Ford, senator, all of a sudden was the hero, the person that Richard Nixon chose for vice president. At that time, they had enough seats in the Senate to get advice and consent. And that's one thing that would be difficult now. But Gerald Ford became president with advice and consent. The reason he didn't have any problem at all, how many know the committee that Gerald Ford was on before? Dan knows. The Warren Commission. And he was a key element in the findings of that commission. Warren was one of these showpieces. Well, when you give a person who's a key element of that, and your goal is to not let the truth come out on that, because Robert Kennedy Jr. is absolutely right, folks. He's absolutely right. CIA used the mafia to take him out. And they did, they had reasons. John F. Kennedy was going to bring our troops home from Vietnam. He wasn't going to start other wars. He didn't let the CIA do in Cuba what they were going to do. So he stopped that, and the CIA didn't like it. So I used to call them the military-industrial complex, you know, the ones that Eisenhower warned us about. I don't call them that anymore. I call them the war-industrial complex. Because I don't want to demonize the military. Those men are honorable, those men and women, and they serve. They can say, yes, sir, I'll go. They don't even think about the things that we have to consider. They go. So I'm not going to demonize them by saying a military-industrial complex. It's the war machine that can't make money in peacetime. Now, it's a consequential thing for us. It's because you look at Raytheon. I live right next to a huge corporation called Eurodrive. It's an international corporation. They make motors and transmission gearings. If there was no war, they wouldn't be hiring people who get benefits, who get jobs, who take care of their families. You look at that all across this country, and even look at the stock market. The war industrial complex has emboldened the stock market to a point that even we who invest in the stock market will make money because of the complex and because of no peace. You've always heard that when there's a war, the economy flourishes, and it does, and there's a reason. Everybody goes to work. Could I get a glass of ice water? Oh, I have it right here. Excuse me. I'm gonna be. Who was that? Ducked out like he could get out of the camera to get his water. I'm gonna do it right in front of the camera. I'm gonna get me some water because I'm a mouse, right?
Exit stage right.
Yeah, that was
Rubio.
He lost an election over that. Silly guy. He should have just drank water right in front of him and not ducked out. So anyway, the war industrial complex. Okay. So how does that finish up the story about why this scenario that I really think is going to happen? We'll see. You heard the three players, Nixon, Agnew, and Ford. Well, the three new players, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton.
Henry Kissinger.
Hillary Clinton.
Henry Kissinger was with Nixon.
Wait a minute. You're talking about Henry Kissinger? He isn't in my story.
Okay. I just wondered because Nixon, Agnew, Kissinger, I thought Kissinger was part of
Well, I don't know. But I'm telling you what I know.
Okay.
And what I know is that's what happened. Gerald Ford was the only president in the history of the country that was never elected to become president. And he lost the second term, but he was never elected. Now, the scenario now that I'm asking you to think about is if Joe Biden, everybody knows that even the Democrats, they know he can't get reelected and he can't make it to 2030, the elections. So if Kamala Harris happens to vacate that seat, then Joe Biden would be the one to choose a replacement as he stands right now, or the people who have their hand up his backside moving his lips. And you can guess about who those people are. I think one of them is Hillary. I think the other one's Barack Obama. I think they're in collusion. They give Joe Biden his marching orders. So what if Hillary Clinton, I always say this, don't ever misunderestimate that woman. She is evil defined. So what if the plan might be, because they know they can't win, what if that plan might be to get her in under that scenario? Joe Biden chooses her as Kamala Harris' replacement, and then Joe Biden disappears, 25th Amendment, or just can't, everybody knows this could happen. He could just fall off a bike or something, hurt himself real bad. But I had somebody that's a pretty clear thinker who told me, well, that can't happen. She could never get confirmed. The Senate has to give advice consent, just like they did Gerald Ford. Well, read the Constitution. In the time of a congressional recess, he can make the appointment until such time as they can reconvene and give advice and consent. But until they do reconvene wholly as a body, she has the title of vice president. What if then, her having that title, if Joe Biden trips and falls over a sandbag backwards, or whatever it is, it's, we joke about it's kind of not fun. I think he has dementia real bad. I'm doing a job for some folks we've known for a long time, and he's got dementia. It's sad. I see some Joe Biden things in him. I actually came up there for 2.5 weeks in order to remodel that bathroom for these folks. But Joe Biden appoints her, and he vacates for whatever reason, and she becomes president. With full authority of the president, she gets now executive privilege. She even gets that as vice president. Well, executive privilege, what does that do? It protects all the players. Whoever were doing her bidding, the Clinton Foundation. How many of you know Mike Rogers in the state of Michigan? He's running for Debbie Stegall seat. Dan Benfield and I went to Mike Rogers' office representing Professor Kaufman. I can't tell what time it is. Okay. And he wouldn't hear us. It was a legitimate cause. Legitimate cause about China stealing information at the University of Michigan. He wouldn't hear it. Didn't know why. So, come to find out on the way up, I found out that Mike Rogers is running for Senate. And who knew, how many of you know where he went after he got out of the House of Representatives? He went to work for the Hillary Foundation, Clinton Foundation. He went to work for the Hillary Clinton Foundation. So we know there's collusion, we know there's compromise. We got Jeffrey Epstein compromise all over the Capitol building, both sides. So what my thinking might happen, and like I said, this is the way I think, it may not be right, it is my advice, take it if you want it. Hillary Clinton will suspend the elections. They don't have a choice. Because there's military tribunals, even as we speak right now, putting people on notice. They don't want to take over the government right in front of the American people. They would like it to play out through another election. But the Marxists in this country who are aligned now with the Democrat Party don't want that. They want revolution in the streets. They want, without communist Russia firing a shot, they want it from within. What if Hillary Clinton suspends the elections? It's the only way Donald Trump is the next president. It's the only way that Donald Trump is not the next president. Everybody here knows that I didn't like Donald Trump in the beginning when he was running primaries. I resigned over it. If you folks remember, I wasn't going to support him. But when he started running against Barack Obama, he was my hero. And when he ran against Hillary Clinton, he was. I was Nell, and he was. What was the guy's name? I forgot his name now.
Dudley Do-Right.
Dudley Do-Right. That's the way I viewed Donald Trump when he started running against Hillary Clinton. So what I'm saying is, he's our next president if we have a duly sworn election, a constitutional election. And I don't think we're going to have that. And I think what's ended up going to happen is, under martial law, we will have to take over the government and return it after housekeeping is done. And Donald Trump, here's why it's important to think about what actually happened on January 6th. Mike Pence, it's my belief that he knew what he could do and didn't do what he ought to do. He even said, I could not, in good faith, turn it over to Congress for an election. Do you know what he was talking about? He was talking about the 12th Amendment. If he had given that 10 days, that two congressmen had given him the authority to do, Ted Cruz is one of them, and I forget the other, he would have had 10 days to have those votes reconsidered by the House legislatures of 3 states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Oh, wow. Those states sound familiar. Yeah, because they're very active, very conservative. They chose Donald Trump in the election was stolen from them here too. Now, if Pence had done what he should have done, nobody would have gotten 270 electors. It would have been thrown back into the 12th Amendment. 12th Amendment. I thought that's what happened. I didn't think we had a traitor in the White House at that time. We did. He could have done what he ought to do, but he didn't do what he should have done. He should have given it 10 days, and if the legislatures who are supposed to, the Constitution says, in whatsoever manner the legislature thereof shall choose. That's how a state sends its electors to Mike Pence. The legislatures of each state has to choose the manner. So when a Secretary of State, Dana Nessel, or a governor, I don't even miss your name, Richie, Chris Whipper, when these governors and secretaries of state and attorney generals, when they change election laws, it's unconstitutional. And we didn't have at that, later on, we found out that we didn't have any strict constitutionalists in our own House, that they wouldn't have done it, but we didn't know that at the time. Mike Pence could have thrown it back to the state legislatures to have them certified. And they wouldn't have certified at that time, at least two of the states wouldn't. And nobody would have gotten 270 electors. That would have thrown it into the 12th Amendment. I'm going to give you, some of you may not know what the 12th Amendment is, and pardon me for accusing you of not knowing. You may know, but it's very critical. If nobody gets 270 electors, it goes to the Congress, it goes to the House. And in the House, each state delegation gets 1 vote. So 26 votes elect the president. Can you see how that works? Yeah, 26 votes, because you have, well, Obama thought there was 52 states, but you have 50 states, so half of those are 26. So the majority of half are 26 states. So a delegation like the state of Michigan, if we have 11 electors or 11 congressmen districts, you get 11 votes. And in the state of Michigan at that time, Trump would have won. Republicans would have, I think I'm right about that. But each delegate gets a vote, and the one who has most votes, the state gets 1 vote in convention for the president. That's true in every state. At that time, had Pence thrown it into the House, 12th Amendment, to Congress, which he said, I can't let the Congress choose the president. He actually said that in an interview, as defense to what he didn't do, he should have done. Had he done that, Donald Trump would have, I did the math, I did the count. And I can't remember for sure if Michigan would have been a Trump vote or not, but it would have been close. But Donald Trump would have had 30 votes. He only needed 26. That's the only time the 26 votes elect the president. 26 votes would have elected the president, and that's why they did what they did January 6th. And that's why we have people laying away in prison without having their day in court like they should have had. And so that's why Antifa, people ask me, should they go on January 6th? I said, do not go. You're going to have people dressed up like Trump supporters doing some very bad things, and I was right on. My wife knows I said it. People ask if some people from around here, that's the issue. I said, do not be there. Now, everybody knows the story. Trump had a rally on the other end of the mall, and 15 minutes it takes to get to the other end. When the rally ended, these false Trump supporters who had Trump guard hats and a lot of Antifa and a lot of FBI undercover, they kicked over the barriers. They broke windows. And all the true Trump supporters, I'm not saying there wasn't some that got caught up in it, but it would have never happened because Trump said, and he's being indicted for causing it, and what he said was go peacefully protest. That was his words. It's actually on record. It's on film. He told his people, when this is over, you march, but peacefully protest. And these Marxists, the Democrats, who, my friend, if you're a Democrat and you're watching on YouTube, I don't hate you because you're liberal. I hate Marxism. And you have gotten in bed with the devil. And I will, all the rest of what I have politically influenced, I will try to resist Marxism. And that's who you're in bed with. And that's what happened January 6th. And they are taking out all the guns on Donald Trump right now because Donald Trump, if he becomes president, there's a lot of people going to jail. A lot of people going to jail. So the color of law and deprivation of rights. That's what the topic was. And I've taken you through some things that I've experienced over the years about having rights deprived. And it's very important to understand that these 16 people stood up in case Mike Pence would have done the thing he ought to have done. Had he done what he ought to have done, those alternative electors would have been certified by Mike Pence. Those 10 days that the legislatures in the state would have said, this has not been done according to the Constitution, it wasn't. But they never got a chance. Those electors, alternative Republican electors, and by the way, I've talked with Tim a lot, and I've listened to some of the depositions. There was nothing on that page that they signed that said, other than we are certified Republican alternative electors. They did not meet in the Capitol building, they met in the capital city. They did not meet, they met in the Republican office. They didn't fulfill the requirements of a true and certified, signed and sealed by the governor of the state as being electors. They weren't. But nothing he signed said they were. Only that they were Republican alternative electors. Nothing wrong with that. But there's 3 people, I'm not going to mention their name, there's 3 people who are in trouble over knowing, and 3 attorneys are in trouble over what they did. They sent a document attached to this, not on the page, but attached to this. It said it was a true and certified copy and was signed as sealed by Gretchen Whitmer as the electors of Michigan. And that's what Tim's being prosecuted over. He was indicted over sending that to the National Archives and to Mike Pence. Folks.
And because of 3 electors?
Well, there was 3 who inadvertently stepped into liability. I don't think they purposely did it, but there's no, I can tell you, after they bankrupt everybody and parade them around, it's going to go through the legal process and they're going to be dismissed. They're going to be dismissed.
Now, was there a plan?
All but 3.
Was there a plan that supposedly was going around, I don't know if it's fake news or what, but that Republican electors, not all of them, but I think it's just few of them, were supposed to find or get their way into the Capitol overnight so they would be there in the chambers. And that's what was being reported on the news.
Okay, So, you believe that? You
Was it
believe
those
it?
3 electors that might have
No. That was phone news, that was a lie. There was never a Republican elector who tried to force themselves in to take a position when Mike Pence made the right decision. He could have done it, and then they would have went in. They might have been part of the rally in January 6th.
It amazes me that how can they be indicted for anything when they weren't even allowed in the chamber?
Okay, you would have had to be in that chamber in the Capitol building, not the city Capitol, because they were in the Republican headquarters, which was in the Capitol headquarters, Capitol City, Lansing. They weren't in the Capitol building, the electors. The night that they were confirmed to be alternative Republican electors. But there was a document sent to Pence, and the archives said they were. At least, according to the depositions I saw of the head of the National Archives and Dana Nessel's assistant, they were very much pushing toward, there was 3 people, and they named them, and I'm not going to name them. One of them I know very well. One of them is a good friend of the Caucus. But they're trying to pin him, and I don't know if he was the one. I'll name him because we know, and I don't know if he's guilty. It's Scott Hagerstrom. I don't know that he's guilty, but I know they're after him. But there's somebody, and I think maybe under the color of law, they did something at the behest of the Marxist Democrats, so that the insurrection would have been a poster child for what the Republicans were trying to do. Because they didn't sign a true and certified copy saying we are the true electors. The 16 did not do that. You know what the signed, Tim knows what the signed. But I asked before the caucus started, now listen to this. I asked, hey Steve, hi, come here. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Don't need it.
Sorry,
Hey, Steve.
Dennis, don't you think Pence, if he wanted to be vice president for 4 more years, would have done it the way it would make him vice president? 6
No.
more years?
Would have done what? Go
Go
The
around
scenario?
the 12th Amendment and stuff like that. Whatever would make him.
The 12th Amendment would not have made Mike Pence president. 12th
I
Amendment,
said vice president.
it would not have made him vice president.
Along with Trump.
No, Trump would have picked a new vice president. I'll guarantee you this. Guaranteed.
Well,
Because you saw Pence's true colors once it's all over, right? He's demonizing Donald
but
Trump.
if Pence would have made him president, then
He wouldn't be vice president because it's a new term. He would have been able to pick his vice president. And by the way, I support Tulsi Gabbard as his choice. All you got to do is listen to her. She's an independent, used to be a Democrat. All you got to do is listen to her. And I know there's disagreement, there's other good candidates. Where was I at, by the way, for my friends walked in? The older I get, the more I have trouble.
Campaign with
We've got a
Dixon.
few more minutes, maybe 5 minutes, so let's make it important. We're in times right now in this country where we cannot do what we did do 10 years ago. With this Tea Party and the success that we have, and most of you here, well, just about all of you, were part of that. We accomplished something. People ask, where did the Tea Party go? Well, the Tea Party can't do what we did. Now, we're in such critical time that once the revelation, once the truth is out, the truth always out, once it's out, and the honorable men and women, I call them in the hinterland, because I get to see a lot of these people, once they find out by revelation what's being done to them, that's when you have the revolution. And I honestly believe Hillary Clinton, or if I'm wrong about that scenario, that she will declare martial law and set aside the elections. If that happens, everybody knows, it's been revealed what their goal was. Everybody will know that it only can be changed by Guantanamo military tribunals and revolution in the streets. That's what founded this country. And that may be what has to rescue it. And we only have a few minutes, so let's take some questions, but don't make them long, and I'll try not to keep the answers long.
I think Hillary Clinton's old news. What I fear, it's gonna.
She is old.
I fear it's gonna be someone the Democrats really love, and that's Michelle Obama.
They love her, but you know what has to happen?
Yeah.
This is not real funny, but it's kind of true. Kind of embarrassed to say it. Presidents get physicals. You know if the accusation is true or not.
Right, and you know what? That just may play in her favor.
It won't.
Because look what's going on right now.
Well, I disagree with you. I don't even think she'll get near it. People say it, and I respectfully disagree with you.
Yeah.
Because the one thing it doesn't do, let me say this, yeah, well, check the birth certificate. That was a big issue. Barack Obama, birth certificates. Okay, but anyway, the thing that doesn't do, to answer your question, it doesn't give Hillary Clinton executive privilege, and I think that's really, really, and let me say again, really important to have her have executive privilege, because if she doesn't, the whole Clinton Foundation goes down, and Mike Rogers too, because he's affiliated with that Clinton Foundation. There is tons of people in the Capitol area that want Hillary Clinton to have executive privilege, and there's only one way she can get it. Everybody tells me she's got too much baggage. Yeah, she does. She can never get elected to anything. She can be appointed with the Ford scenario. That's all I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying in my scenario that.
Incidentally, they recently came out and confirmed that Obama, Barack, was a homosexual.
Okay.
That was in the news.
That is a big issue. I mean, look at I'd accept Hunter and all the things that he was doing, so they don't care about that. Okay, so other questions, quick answers. I lied, I get a long answer. Dan?
What do you think, the situation with BRICS, the fact that these other countries now?
BRICS?
Yeah.
It's not gonna work.
Huh?
It's not gonna work. And there's a reason. There's two reasons. I'm glad you asked the question. The two reasons are the Atlantic and the Pacific, and also the Mississippi River. We are the only country in the entire world who has the protection of two oceans. They can't reach us like they can in Albania. Communists and nations who oppose other nations or border each other, and they make people die. They have raging hordes. The raging hordes can't reach us because of the protection God gave us when this country was started. God's hand was on this country. They can't reach us. They can now with the nukes, but you know what I said about nukes? It's like everybody's selling little sticks, so the war continues, the fighting, but nobody really wants to sell the big sticks because then the war stops fighting and you don't make money selling the sticks. Nobody needs them, they're all dead. So the answer to your question, the World Economic Forum wants BRICS, and it's not going to work because this country will always be the economic giant that it has been. And Donald Trump will navigate us through the waters of digital currency, because it's coming. It won't be by him, but it's coming. We need to be navigated through digital currency and bankruptcy. And he's pretty good at that. He's pretty good with bankruptcy. He knows how to navigate through it. And I think that's our future, but we've got a lot of things happening. One more question, because my answers are going long.
I recall hearing that a race between Kennedy and Nixon, if they'd counted those votes accurately, I think it was between two states, Texas and some other one, that Nixon would have won. And think about that. If Nixon had been...
This is not a question.
Yeah, what?
You're giving a statement. I think you're right. Do you have a question about?
If Nixon had been confronted with the missiles of October,
It still doesn't sound like a
the
question.
Republican legislature would have prompted him to attack, and we wouldn't be here right now because it would have been World War III.
Okay. Closing statement. No more questions, no answers. We need to understand what BlackRock is and what ESG is. Who knows what ESG is? ESG is economic, social, and government. ESG is why you have on a Bud Light hat, a transgender on the can. Who in his right mind? Now, they have the right to do what they want to do. The libertarian in me says, I don't want to interfere with their rights. But who in their right mind, with a racing team, the good old boys, that drink Budweiser would make those people put their hands around the transgender to get a drink. Who in their right mind? There's a reason they did it. You want to know what it is? BlackRock and Vanguard, these two corporations that own the world, have put on corporations, Disney also, the ESG standard of testing. You get scored how economic, social, government, the social thing, if you are doing all the right things and you become woke, and the transgender on Bud Light, they got scored big time on that. But did woke really, they went broke.
Guess
didn't
what
they?
was served at our UAW retirees picnic? Bud Light. And they probably got it dirt cheap
Well,
as.
yeah, that's why they got it cheap. Well, folks, I want you to be concerned about that because that's coming. The BRICS question was a good question. I didn't get much information on it for you, but I don't think it's going to work.
Well, they said today that Mexico is building a wall, and the construction workers were asked by a reporter, and they said it's to keep the Americans out, because they said the dollar's going to collapse. That was their reason for why they
Yeah,
building
probably the
wall.
reason they're building the wall is to keep the illegals from coming back. You know, I told Mitt Romney one time, and I'm ashamed to tell you that we had a little relationship as far as supporting him and stuff. I told him one time when we was being interviewed by the press, I said, Mitt Romney's politics will get the wall built, and this is being recorded, Detroit News. We had a round table discussion. Mitt Romney was sitting on the right hand, and I looked in and I said, his registration, I forget what it's called, make them register, E-Verify, will cause them to build a wall. And people asked, how's that possible? And I said, well, America won't have to build it, Mexico will. He said, Mexico build a wall. And the reason they'll build a wall is because all the illegals and some very hard-working, good people are illegal and come here. But all the illegals who are not good people, if those walls got built, Mexico will build will keep those people from coming back if E-Verify was the policy, because they couldn't find work. And we also need a system to identify them where they are. We can debate about that, we don't have time. So I would just like to say thank you for allowing me this time. It's like old times. I love it. And but that time is over. We individually now have to find remedy and tell your neighbor about it. We're not going to meet here. It takes sacrifice for people to meet like this now. And with the economy the way it is, people don't have the luxury of not getting up early the next day and going to try to make money. People sacrificed to come to the Tea Party Caucus in those days. And you're sacrificing for being here because you care. And we have had some good times. But things are different now, and the remedy's different. And I honestly believe Donald Trump is God's Hezekiah. He will build the walls that Hezekiah did, and he will know how to handle China, North Korea, and these UAW strikes, they wouldn't happen if Donald Trump was president. They would not happen if Donald Trump was president. So they will happen now. We're headed into some hard times. I'll give you a few weeks. And there's all three automakers. Never in the history of the unions has that happened. It's going to be tough. It's going to affect every economic phase of our lives for a while. Thank you, and good evening.